Alright guys, so we are going to be taking notes today on tangent lines. So we're going to be on this topic for 2 days. So although the first day you are watching this from a video, tomorrow we'll be doing more tangent lines. If you guys have any questions, just mark them down in your notes as we go through. So pretend you're back in Algebra 2. Okay, the equation of a line, you should have been given 2 forms. The first one everybody always remembers is y equals mx plus b. Okay, that is called slope-intercept form. Okay, the reason why it's called that is because you need 2 ingredients. You need the slope and you need the y-intercept. Okay, everybody always remembers that equation, but the other equation that you should know is y minus y1, mx minus x1. Okay, that is called point-slope form. Okay, now it's called point-slope form, okay, for pretty much the same reason as the other one. Those are the ingredients that you need to write the equation in this form. So you need a point, x1, y1, and then you need a slope. That's your m. So you have 2 different equations for writing the equation for a line. Now, rather than doing this, we're going to kind of calculusify it, pretend that's a word. So your calculus version, okay, instead of calling this y value y1, we're going to call it f of a. Okay, but keep in mind that's still a y value, so that's the same. Okay, then m is the slope. Well, then m is going to be f prime of a. And then over here we'll have x minus a. So a is your x value, that's your slope at your x value, that's your y value at your x value. Okay? So let's say that you are given that f of 2 is 3, negative 3, excuse me, and f prime of 2 is a half. Okay, so this is your first example, number 1. Let's say that you're asked to write the equation of the tangent line. Okay, well then all that you would have to do, we'll put at x equals 2. All that you would have to do is think about your point-slope form. So the first thing I need for point-slope is a point. The second thing I need is a slope. Okay, well if they gave me this basically is a point. This is my x value, this is my y value. So when I write the ordered pair for my point, my x is going to be 2, my y is going to be minus 3. Taking that from right here. Then my slope, well that's what f prime at 2 stands for, so my slope is going to be a half. Then from there, all you have to do is put your equation in point-slope form. So I'm going to do y minus y1, which is negative 3. X, which slope is 1/2 m. And then x minus x1, which is 2. Now, from there, obviously, if I have a minus negative, I'm going to switch that to a plus. So really, that's a y plus 3 on that side. Then to put it in slope-intercept form, which is your y equals mx plus b, I'm just going to distribute this guy. So half of x is half x. Half of minus 2 is minus 1. Then from there, I'm going to minus my 3 across. And it's a half x minus 4. Okay? So this would be your slope-intercept form. Not like you care, but just pretend like you care. Okay. Alright, now obviously it gets a little bit harder than that. Shouldn't get too hard, but let's do another one. So, if you need to pause the video, do it. If not, we are going to move on. So, example number 2. You're going to write the equation of the line tangent to f of x equals 3x squared plus 5. at x equals 1. So remember, your ingredients are the same. You're going to need a point. You're going to need a slope. Now, if they told me that x is 1, that's half of my point right there. But I still need the y value. So in order for me to get the y value at 1, all I have to do is plug into the original. So if I want to know f of 1, well, I have 3 times 1 squared plus 5. Okay, follow your PEMDAS exponent first. 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. So my ordered pair is 1, 8. Okay, next I need the slope. Remember, what's a slope? A slope is the derivative. So I'm going to find f prime of x, taking the derivative of this guy over here. Okay, so if it's a 3x squared plus 5, then I'm going to multiply my 2 down onto the 3. So now that's a 6, x to the 1. And then my plus 5, the derivative of that is 0. So f prime is 6x. Now I want f prime of 1. Well, then that's 6 times 1, which is 6. Then from here, I have my 2 ingredients. So my point is 1, 8. My slope is 6. Then it's y minus y1, which is 8. Slope is 6. X minus x1. X is 1. Okay, that would be point-slope form. If you're asked to put it in slope-intercept form, you would have y minus 8 equals 6x times negative 1 gives me a negative 6. And then I'd add my 8 across for my second version. So negative 8 and plus 8 cross out with each other. Y equals 6x plus 2. And that would be your equation. Now keep in mind on the AP test, they are going to show you both of these, so you just have to kind of be aware of how to do it on both. Okay? Alright, next one. We're going to have number 3, y equals 1/8 x squared. And we're going to write the equation of the tangent line. Through x equals negative 4. Okay, so remember, it's the same ingredients every time. You need a point, you need a slope. So first thing I need is my point. Second thing I'm going to find is my slope. Now notice that if they gave me that the x is negative 4, that's half of my point right there. So negative 4 is my x. In order for me to find the y, I need to take negative 4, plug it into my equation. So I'm going to write f of negative 4 equals an 8th negative 4 quantity squared. Now keep in mind that when you square a negative number, that's negative 4 times negative 4 again. That's going to come out to be a positive 16. And 16 times an 8th is the same as 16 divided by 8, which is 2. So my y value is 2. Okay, I have my point. Next thing I need is my, say it with me, slope. So in order to find slope, I'm going to take y prime. Now keep in mind that I already had an 8th here in the front. So when I take that 2 and I multiply it down on the 8, that's going to basically be 2/8. And then x is to the 1. Now I'm not going to leave it like that because that looks weird. Okay, but 2/8 is the same as a 4th x. Now, I don't want the slope at y prime. I want the slope y prime at negative 4. So then I'm going to take my negative 4, plug it in right there. A 4th times negative 4 is negative 1. That's my slope. Then from there, we're going to write our equation of the line both ways. We're going to start with point slope. So remember, my point is negative 4, 2. My slope is negative 1. Then it's y minus 2 equals, because that's my y value. Then my slope is negative 1. And then if my x value is a minus 4, rather than putting minus and negative, I'm just going to put x plus 4. but technically it's x minus negative 4, and that's why it becomes a plus. Okay, that's point slope. Now let's solve it for slope-intercept. So my y minus 2 stays the same. My negative 1 distributes in. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. Then I take my minus 2 and add that across. So I have y equals negative 1x minus 2. Now remember, both of these equations are for the same line. Okay, so on the AP test, you need to know how to solve it for this, but pretty much for the rest of the day, we're not going to just keep resolving it for both. We're just going to leave it, okay? Alright, pause the video if you need to. We got a couple more examples. Okay, last one like that. So this is example number 4. We're going to work a little bit of trig in here. So let's say that your equation is f of x equals 2x plus 5 cosine x. Let's say that you want to write the equation of the tangent line at x equals pi halves. Okay? So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to find your two main ingredients, which are the point and the slope. Now remember again, they've given me the x value, that's half of the point that I need. So it's going to be pi halves comma something, then we're going to plug it in. Now remember, for the other half of the point, you're plugging into the original, not to the derivative. So I'm just plugging into this guy, what I already had. So it's 2 times pi halves plus 5 times cosine pi halves. Okay, well, 2 times pi halves, these 2's are going to cross out with each other. So I'm going to take these 2's out. That leaves me with just a pi left over. And then the cosine of pi halves, well, that's my thumb. Cosine's on top. Nobody's above the top, so that's 5 times 0, which means that it's just pi. Okay, next, I need my slope. Remember, slope means derivative. So I'm going to find f prime of x via my usual rules. So if this is a 2x over here, that's really a 2x to the 1. When I take the derivative, 1 times 2 is 2. Now x is going to be to the 0, because remember I have to take 1 away from that. Okay, then for my snow cone, this is a positive 5 cosine, that puts me here. But if I go down 1, that puts me at negative sign. So it's going to be negative 5 sine x. Now, that's the slope at any x value. I want the slope at my x value. So I'm going to take pi halves. I'm going to plug that guy in. So I have 2 minus 5 times the sine of pi halves. Okay, let's find this guy first. So pi halves is still my thumb. This time I want sine. Sine are my bottom fingers for the hand trig. So if all of my fingers are on bottom, that value is going to be 1. So I have 2 minus 5 times 1. That's 2 minus 5, which is negative 3. Then from there, I have my point over here. I have my slope over here. Then I'm ready to write the equation of my tangent line. So I'm going to have y minus pi, negative 3, and then x minus, my x was pi halves. So this would be the equation of the tangent line. Now there's one other type of line that you could see, and it's a perpendicular line. So I want to just remind you, really the only thing that's different if you want a perpendicular line is the slope. So remember that if you have a perpendicular line, they're opposite reciprocals. So what that means is that you're going to change the sign. So if it's positive, you'll change it to a negative. If it's negative, you'll change it to a positive. And then after you change the sign, you're going to flip it as well. That's what a reciprocal is. So for example, if I wanted to give you the reciprocal slope of this, the only thing I would change is the slope. If that's a -3, that's like a -3/1. So my slope for a perpendicular slope would be +1/3. Everything else stays the same though. My point is still pi-halves for my x, and then pi for my y. So this would be a perpendicular line. Okay? Alright, hopefully that makes sense. So we are going to try to get through a couple more examples here. So the next one is going to be to write the equation of the tangent line to f of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 5 at its x-intercept x greater than 0. Okay, so let's think about, same thing as last time. I need the exact same two ingredients. I need a point and I need a slope. So I need a point. I'm going to need a slope. Now, instead of them just giving me the x value, they're telling me that they want it to be an x-intercept. So this is where you understanding what an x-intercept is going to come in pretty handy. An x-intercept is any point along the x-axis. Now I want you to think about, if I'm going to be on the x-axis, that's here, all these points. Okay, then all of those points are going to have the same y value. Okay, this is 1, 0, 2, 0, -1, 0, -2, 0, -3, 0. So all of those points, my y value is 0. That is how you find an x-intercept. So rather than giving me the x, they're actually giving me the y instead. So my y is 0 because I'm on the x-axis, and I'm going to have to find my x. So come back to the original. 0 is my y value, set equal to x squared minus 4x minus 5. And then I notice I'm going to end up getting two answers because it's quadratic. So 0 equals, I need numbers that multiply to -5 and subtract to -4. So I'm going to pick 1 times 5 since it's prime, but I'm going to do 1 minus on the 5. So it'll be an x plus 1 and an x minus 5. Now remember that my actual solutions will be the opposite to those values. So if this is a plus 1, my x is really a minus 1. This is a minus 5, my x is really a positive 5. Now technically, okay, I have two x-intercepts. I don't want both of them. Okay, they told me which one to pick when they told me this right here. I need to choose the x that's going to be greater than 0. So that means that my -1 over here, that can't be the right point. I need to choose my 5. So my point is 5, 0. Now I'm ready to find the slope. So remember, the first step to finding your slope is to take your function and take its derivative. So I want f prime of x equal to, then I'm looking at this guy right here, we're taking the derivative. What's the derivative of x squared? Derivative of x squared is 2x. Derivative of minus 4x is just a minus 4. Then the derivative of minus 5, that's a constant, so it's 0. Okay, then remember that when I want f prime at a number, I'm always plugging in the x. So we already got our 5, that's what we're going to plug in over here. So 2 times 5 minus 4, 2 times 5 is 10, 10 minus 4 is 6. So what that tells me is that my slope is going to be 6. From there, let's write the equation of our tangent line. So it's going to be y minus 0, pulling my 0 from right there. My slope is 6. always goes in the front. And then if my x was a 5, it'll be x minus 5. Now, that's your tangent line. What about your perpendicular line? Well, I'd have y minus 0, and then this guy right here, I'm going to have to perpendicularize, pretend that's a word. So 6 is the same as 6 over 1. So if I flip that, it's a negative 1 over 6. And then x minus 5 stays the same. So remember, the only difference between a perpendicular and a tangent is the slope. Your point and everything else should pretty much be the same. Okay? All right. 2 more left. Promise. 2 more. Really, I have more examples than that, but I don't want to make your video too long for you to watch. Okay, so next one. You are going to write the equation of the tangent line to f of x equals ln x plus 2 at its x-intercept. Okay, so very similar to last time. We know we need an x-intercept for a point. Okay, so then we have to think about, okay, well, if my point is an x-intercept, then that tells me that my y value has to be 0, just like last time. So I need a point with a y value of 0, and I need a slope. Well, to find the other half of my point, I'm going to take my 0. I'm going to plug it in for the y value, which is f of x, and then I'm going to solve. So I know that I want ln x plus 2 to be equal to 0. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is minus my 2 across here. So ln x equals negative 2. And then in order for you to cancel out an ln, hopefully you remember all this stuff. This is like algebra 2. To cancel out an ln, you're going to take the e on both sides. So e and ln here are going to cross out with each other. Your x is going to come down. X equals e to the negative 2. Or, if you like it better, 1 over e squared is fine. I'm going to use this one just because I don't like the negative exponent, but technically it's still right if you leave it like that. So my point is 1 over e squared, comma, 0. Next thing that I need is my slope. Remember, for the slope, I need to take the derivative. So f prime of x equals, I need to take the derivative of ln x. Hopefully you remember, derivative of Lx is what? Say it out loud. Ln x is 1 over x when you take the derivative. Then your plus 2, the derivative is 0 because that's a constant. Then from there, I want f prime of e to the negative 2. That'd be 1 over e to the negative 2. Okay, but then think about, if you have a negative exponent on the bottom of a fraction, well then that guy needs to come back up. So now my e to the negative 2 divided on the bottom is really going to be an e squared on top. Another way for you to think about it is, if I have this, I'm doing 1 over e. Well, if I'm dividing by a fraction, then I can take this bottom guy and I can flip it. So it becomes 1 times e over 1. Oops, I forgot my squared on there. Okay, it becomes 1 over e squared flipped is e squared over 1 times by the 1 on top. You still get e squared. So that's your slope. Then from there you'd write the equation of the tangent line. So my tangent line for that guy would be y minus 0. E squared is my slope, and then x minus 1 over e squared. Now let's say we wanted a perpendicular line to that. It'd be y minus 0, And then when I get to e squared, I need to make it negative 1 over e squared. Because remember, I have to change the sign to a negative and then I have to flip it. And then x minus 1 over e squared. Okay. All right. I promised you I'd only make you do one more. So that means we'll have a little more to do next time, but it's okay. I don't want to overwhelm you. So last one I'm going to give you. Write the equation of the tangent line to f of x equals 3x squared plus 4x at the point where f prime of x is 10. Okay, and I sort of lost count of my numbers here, so let's see. That was 5, this is 6. That makes this guy number 7. Okay, so first setup, I see the equation of a tangent line. I know I'm going to need a point. I know I'm going to need a slope. So usually they've either given me the x value for the point or they told me it was an x-intercept, then I know the y value is 0. This time they're telling me something totally different. They want f prime to equal 10. Okay, well think about f prime. What does that represent? That represents the slope. So rather than starting me off with part of the point, they're telling me the slope needs to be 10. Okay, well think about it. If I know the slope is 10, then I'm going to set that equal to the derivative. So f prime of x, let's figure out what that is. Okay, derivative over here, so I'd have 2 times 3 is 6x. Okay, then the plus 4x, the derivative is just plus 4. And if this is the slope for any point, and I know I need it to be 10, I'm going to set those equal to find the x value. So this is my slope formula, my derivative, and then this is the slope that I want, 10. Well, then I'm going to minus my 4 across. 4's cross out there. I have 6x equals 10 minus 4 is 6. Divide by 6 on both sides. X is 1. So the only place on my x squared graph where my slope is 10 is at 1. Well, then that's the x value of my point. I already have the slope is 10, so the only thing I still need is my y value. Remember, to find a y value, you take your x and plug it in. So I would be finding f of 1, which is 3 times 1 squared plus 4 times 1. 1 squared is 1, times 3 is 3. 4 times 1 is 4. 3 plus 4 is 7. Then from there, I would have my point here, I'd have my slope here, so I'd just write the equation of my tangent line. So tangent line would be y minus 7 equals, slope was 10, x minus 1. If you were asked to do a perpendicular slope, you would do y minus 7 equals, then remember this guy, you're going to flip it and make it negative. So negative 1/10 x minus 1. Okay? Alright, so that puts you right at 28 minutes. You should have some time to get a head start on your homework for this assignment. And then I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do some more examples of this. Okay? Hope you have a great day. Don't forget tomorrow, homeworks that are due are homework 7A, homework 8, and homework 9. All of those guys are due tomorrow, okay? You can do it.